The email arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing grand jury indictments in my office at the U.S. Attorney's headquarters in downtown Boston. Sarah, your sister Melissa is co-chairing the Children's Hospital Gala on Saturday with Amanda Richardson, Congressman Richardson's wife. This is a critical networking event for Melissa's interior design business. Elite clients will be there. You are not to attend. Your presence would be embarrassing given your situation. Melissa has worked too hard to have you ruin this for her. Mother. My situation. That's what Mom called it when I'd left my job at Morrison & Price, one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms, 3 years ago. I'd been on the partner track. Corner office in sight. $320,000 annual salary. I'd walked away to become an assistant U.S. attorney, making $147,000 a year to prosecute federal crimes. You're throwing away your career, Mom had said. For what? To play hero. To do work that matters, I'd replied. She'd hung up on me. My younger sister Melissa had been thrilled. With me out of the successful spotlight, she could finally shine. She'd built a boutique interior design firm, catering to Boston's elite. She networked at charity galas, joined the right clubs, married the right man, Connor Walsh, a hedge fund manager. They lived in Beacon Hill. They vacationed in the Hamptons. They were exactly what our family wanted. I lived in a modest condo in Cambridge. I worked 70-hour weeks prosecuting organized crime, corruption, and financial fraud. I had a security detail because I'd received death threats from 3 different criminal organizations. But Mom called it throwing my life away. I deleted her email and returned to the RICO case on my desk. We were 3 weeks from trial against a Boston crime family. The evidence was solid. We'd secured cooperation from 2 mid-level associates. Convictions seemed likely. My phone buzzed with a text. Melissa, Mom told you about Saturday, right? Please don't come. Amanda Richardson is everything for my business. Her friends are my target clients. I can't have my prosecutor sister scaring everyone away. I typed back, congratulations on co-chairing. Hope it goes well. Melissa, that's not an answer. Promise me you won't show up. Sarah, I won't crash your event, Melissa. Melissa, good. Because honestly, Sarah, you made your choice. You chose criminals over family. Let those of us who made smart choices have this. I set the phone down, trying not to let it sting. My paralegal, Kevin, appeared in my doorway. The Richardson documents just came in. The Congressman's financial disclosures for the past 5 years. You wanted them for the Phillips corruption case. Leave them on my desk. Thanks. He paused. You okay? You look annoyed. Family stuff. The why aren't you making more money conversation. The stay away from my important event conversation. Kevin winced. Ouch. For what it's worth, boss, you're prosecuting people who've terrorized communities for decades. That's worth more than any corner office. After he left, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts to Amanda Richardson. Amanda and I had been roommates at Harvard Law. We'd studied together, survived 1L together, supported each other through the brutal competition. After graduation, she'd clerked for a federal judge, then married James Richardson, now a U.S. congressman representing Massachusetts's 5th District. We'd stayed close. Coffee every few months. Text checking in. He knew about my work. I knew about her advocacy for children's health care, her foundation work, her role as a congressional spouse. But my family didn't know we were friends. They'd never asked about law school. Never asked about my life in those 3 years. They'd been too busy being disappointed I'd chosen Harvard over Yale, where Dad's college roommate was on the board. I pulled up Amanda's last text from 2 weeks ago. Amanda, lunch soon? I miss you. Also, random question. Are you related to Melissa Chin? She's co-chairing the hospital gala with me. I'd responded, yes. My younger sister. How's that going? Amanda, she's enthusiastic. Talks a lot about connections and networking opportunities. Very different energy from you. Sarah, we're very different. Amanda, I'll say. Listen, you should come to the gala. I'd love to catch up and it's for a good cause. Sarah, I'll think about it. Now, staring at Mom's email and Melissa's text, I made a decision. I texted Amanda. Is the invitation still open for Saturday? Amanda, absolutely. I'll add you to the VIP list. Sarah, I'm so glad you're coming. Sarah, one question, does my family know we're friends? Amanda, your sister? No, I don't think so. She's never mentioned you except to say you work in law enforcement. Why? Sarah, long story. See you Saturday. Growing up, I'd been the golden child until I wasn't. Valedictorian. Harvard Law. Federal clerkship with Judge Patricia Morrison of the First Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the most respected judges in the country. Then I'd made my mistake. Instead of joining Morrison and Price, where Dad had arranged the interviews, I'd accepted a position with the U.S. Attorney's Office. You're turning down $320,000 to make $90,000? Mom had asked, horrified. For what? To prosecute the people who hurt communities. To use my education to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's naive, Sarah. You're naive. Melissa, 23 and fresh out of design school, had smiled. Finally, she wasn't in my shadow. Over the next 3 years, I'd built a reputation. I'd successfully prosecuted a state senator for corruption. I'd taken down a human trafficking ring. I'd secured convictions against organized crime figures who'd operated with impunity for decades. Last year, at 32, I'd been promoted to Senior Assistant U.S. Attorney. The U.S. Attorney himself had recommended me for a federal judgeship when the next vacancy opened. But my family only knew I'd left the good job. They didn't know about the commendations. The cases that made the New York Times. The fact that defense attorneys who'd once been my peers now called me one of the best prosecutors in New England. They'd never asked. Amanda Richardson knew. She texted me after every major case. Saw the news. You're incredible. When I'd received a death threat serious enough to warrant FBI protection, she called immediately. Are you safe? What do you need? That's what real friends did. Friday evening my phone rang. Sarah, I'm so excited you're coming tomorrow. But I need to warn you. Your sister has been telling people she's the successful Chin sister, with the important career. I don't think she knows what you actually do. She knows I'm a prosecutor. She told someone you work in local law enforcement. Sarah, you're a federal prosecutor. You work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Those are very different things. I haven't corrected her. Why not? Because I got tired of defending my choices. Let her think what she wants. Amanda was quiet. You know James and I are hosting, right? If your family treats you poorly tomorrow, I won't tolerate it. You're my friend. You're also one of the most accomplished lawyers I know. Amanda. I mean it. You clerked for Judge Morrison. You've prosecuted cases that changed policy. The Attorney General mentioned you in a speech last month as an example of excellence in public service. I'm not going to let your family diminish that. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, wondering if attending was a mistake. My boss, U.S. Attorney Richard Chin, no relation, had a different perspective when I'd mentioned the gala during our weekly briefing. You should go, he'd said. Amanda Richardson is an important advocate for issues we care about. Her husband sits on the House Judiciary Committee. These relationships matter. My family will be there. The family that doesn't speak to you because you chose public service? That's the one. He'd smiled grimly. Then they should see what you've become. Not to prove anything to them but to remind yourself. You're a damn fine prosecutor, Sarah. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Saturday arrived. The gala was at the Four Seasons, black tie, $1,000 per plate. I wore a navy gown I'd bought for legal conferences and arrived at 7:15 p.m. The ballroom glittered with Boston's elite. I recognized faces from the news. Philanthropists, business leaders, old money families. At the entrance, Melissa stood with Amanda, greeting guests. Melissa looked stunning in an emerald dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She was mid-conversation with an older couple, gesturing animatedly about timeless design principles. Amanda saw me first. Her face lit up. Sarah. She crossed the entrance hall and pulled me into a hug. You look beautiful. I'm so glad you're here. Melissa's head whipped around. Her smile froze. Sarah? What are you doing here? Amanda invited me, I said simply. Know each other? Amanda laughed. Know each other? Sarah was my roommate at Harvard Law. We've been friends for over a decade. Melissa's face went pale. Your roommate. Best friends actually, Amanda continued warmly. Sarah, come meet everyone. You know Congressman Richardson, of course. James Richardson, tall and distinguished in his tuxedo, shook my hand. Miss Chin. Amanda talks about you constantly. It's wonderful to finally meet in person. The pleasure's mine, Congressman. Please call me James. Anyone who helped Amanda survive 1L has earned first-name basis. He turned to the couple Melissa had been speaking with. May I introduce Sarah Chin? She's a senior assistant U.S. attorney, one of the finest prosecutors in Massachusetts. Sarah, this is Robert and Eleanor Whitmore. Robert Whitmore's eyebrows rose. The Sarah Chin? Who prosecuted the Giordano case? Yes, sir. Remarkable work. That conviction sent shockwaves through organized crime in New England. I followed the trial closely. Eleanor added, and the Senator Morrison corruption case. My husband and I have been supporting anti-corruption initiatives for years. Your work has been invaluable. Melissa stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Amanda linked her arm through mine. Come on, I want you to meet the hospital's board chair. She's been asking about you since she heard you were coming. As we walked away, I glanced back. Melissa looked like she'd been slapped. The next hour was surreal. Amanda introduced me to donor after donor, and each one knew my work. The hospital board chair had followed the human trafficking case. A philanthropist asked about federal-state cooperation in white-collar crime prosecution. A retired judge mentioned he'd read one of my appellate briefs and found it masterfully argued. You didn't tell me you were famous, Amanda teased during a quiet moment. I'm not famous. I'm just good at my job. Sarah, the Attorney General quoted you in a speech. That's famous in legal circles. Across the room I saw Melissa watching us. She stood with Mom and Dad, who'd arrived late. Mom's face was pinched with confusion. Dad looked uncomfortable. At 8:30, Amanda tapped her champagne glass for attention. The room quieted as she stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for supporting Children's Hospital tonight. I'm thrilled to be co-chairing this event with Melissa Chin. She gestured to my sister, who smiled weakly. And I'm especially grateful that so many community leaders and public servants could join us. She continued talking about the hospital's work, the funds raised, the impact on families. Then, I want to take a moment to recognize some special guests tonight. We have several people in this room who dedicate their lives to public service. They could make more money elsewhere, but they choose to serve. I have profound respect for that choice. Her eyes found mine. My dear friend Sarah Chin is here tonight. For those who don't know, Sarah is a senior assistant U.S. attorney who prosecutes some of the most complex federal crimes in our state. She's taken on organized crime, corruption, human trafficking, cases that require extraordinary courage and skill. Sarah, could you stand? My heart pounded. I stood slowly. The room applauded. It wasn't polite applause. It was genuine, sustained. Robert Whitmore stood, followed by others. Within seconds, half the room was on its feet. I saw Mom's face go white. Dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Melissa looked like she might cry. Amanda waited for the applause to die down. Sarah clerked for Judge Patricia Morrison, one of the most respected jurists in the country. She graduated from Harvard Law with honors. She's been recommended for a federal judgeship. And she's also my best friend from law school, the person who helped me survive the hardest 3 years of my education. She raised her glass. To public servants like Sarah, who remind us that success isn't measured in dollars but in impact. Thank you, Sarah, for everything you do. Another round of applause. I sat down, my face burning. Amanda stepped off the stage and immediately came to my table. Was that too much? I probably should have warned you. It's fine, I managed. Thank you. Your family looks shocked. They didn't know. How did they not know? Sarah, you're extraordinary at what you do. They never asked. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger. They never. Sarah, you've been prosecuting major federal crimes for 3 years and your family doesn't know. They knew I left the firm. They decided that meant I'd failed. I stopped trying to correct them. Amanda's jaw tightened. Excuse me for a moment. 10 minutes later, Mom approached my table. Her face was a careful mask of composure, but her hands trembled slightly. Sarah, may I speak with you? Of course. She sat down, smoothing her dress. I didn't realize you knew Amanda Richardson. We were roommates at Harvard. You never mentioned that. You never asked about law school. She flinched. And your work? Amanda said you're a federal prosecutor. Senior assistant U.S. attorney, yes. I've been with the office for 3 years. But you left Morrison and Price. You gave up a partnership. To prosecute federal crimes. Organized crime, public corruption, human trafficking, financial fraud. I work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mom's mouth opened and closed. We thought, you said you were working in prosecution. We thought you meant local courts. District attorney, something like that. I'm a federal prosecutor. I work for the United States government. My cases are in federal court. The people standing and applauding. Many of them have followed my work. Or they support the issues I've prosecuted. Anti-corruption, anti-trafficking, that kind of thing. She looked genuinely lost. Why didn't you tell us? I did tell you. When I took the job, I explained exactly what it was. You told me I was throwing my life away. After that, I stopped trying to explain. But a federal judgeship? Amanda said you've been recommended. The U.S. attorney recommended me when the next vacancy opens. It's not guaranteed, but yes, I'm on the list. Mom sat back in her chair. I don't understand. You gave up $320,000 to make what? I make $147,000 now. I got promoted last year. That's less than half. And I'm doing work that matters, Mom. I've put people in prison who hurt communities for decades. I've protected victims who had nowhere else to turn. I clerked for one of the most respected judges in the country. I'm building a reputation as someone who can handle the hardest cases. That's worth more to me than money. But we thought. You thought I'd failed. I know. I met her eyes. You didn't ask. You didn't want to know. You decided who I was, and I let you believe it because I was tired of defending myself. Melissa appeared, her face blotchy from crying. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Melissa. I told everyone you worked in law enforcement. Like a police officer. I didn't know you were a federal prosecutor. I didn't know you were this. She gestured vaguely at the room where people were still glancing at me with respect. I tried to tell you. Multiple times. You weren't interested. As you left the firm. You gave up everything. I gave up a job I hated to do work I love. That's not failure, Melissa. She wiped her eyes. Amanda Richardson is my biggest networking opportunity. These people are my target clients. And now they all know you're my sister, the federal prosecutor who clerked for a famous judge and gets recommended for judgeships. How am I supposed to compete with that? I stared at her. This isn't a competition. It is to Mom and Dad. It always has been. And I finally had something where I was the successful one, where I was the one they bragged about, and now, her voice cracked. Tao, you're this. I've been this for 3 years, Melissa. You just didn't ask. Dad approached next, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. Sarah. That was quite an introduction Amanda gave you. Yes. Federal prosecutor. I have to admit, I didn't fully understand what you were doing. I explained it when I took the job. You said you were leaving Morrison and Price for the U.S. Attorney's Office. I suppose I thought that was a lateral move to a less prestigious position. It was a move to the most prestigious criminal prosecution office in the state, Dad. Federal prosecutors handle the cases local offices can't. Organized crime. Corruption. Multi-state fraud. These aren't small cases. He adjusted his glasses. The Whitmore Foundation donated $50,000 tonight. Robert Whitmore spent 20 minutes talking about your work on the Giordano case. He called it landmark prosecution. It was a significant RICO case, yes. Why didn't you tell us about these successes? I laughed, a bitter sound. You told me I was throwing my life away. You haven't asked about my work in 3 years. You didn't invite me to family events because I might bring down the mood with my unfortunate career choice. Why would I share my successes with people who'd already decided I'd failed? His face reddened. We were concerned about your future. No, you were concerned about status. About what you could tell your friends. My daughter, the federal prosecutor who clerks for prestigious judges, doesn't sound as impressive as my daughter, the partner at Morrison and Price, until you actually understand what federal prosecution means. That's not fair. Isn't it? Mom sent me an email telling me to stay away from tonight because my situation would embarrass Melissa. My situation. My career prosecuting federal crimes and serving my country is a situation to be hidden. Amanda reappeared at my elbow. Sarah, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's someone I'd like you to meet. Judge Morrison is here. She came as a surprise guest. My heart stopped. Judge Patricia Morrison? Yes. She heard you were attending and wanted to say hello. She's at the VIP table. I excused myself from my father and followed Amanda across the ballroom. At a corner table sat Judge Patricia Morrison, elegant in her 70s, wearing a deep purple gown. She stood when she saw me. Sarah Chin. How wonderful to see you. Judge Morrison. This is an honor. The honor is mine. I've been following your work. The Phillips corruption case. That was masterful. Your RICO prosecution against the Giordano family used precedents I set 15 years ago. You built on them beautifully. Thank you. Your opinions were foundational to our strategy. She smiled. I heard through the grapevine that you're on the list for the next federal appointment. The U.S. Attorney was kind enough to recommend me. Richard Chin doesn't give recommendations lightly. He told me you're one of the finest legal minds he's worked with. She paused. When the time comes, I'll be calling the Senate Judiciary Committee myself. You clerked for me. I know your work. You'd make an excellent judge. Behind me I heard a soft gasp. I turned to see Melissa standing a few feet away, champagne glass in hand, having apparently followed me across the room. Judge Morrison noticed her. And you are? Melissa Chin. Sarah's sister. The interior designer. Amanda mentioned you're co-chairing tonight. Wonderful work for a wonderful cause. Thank you, Your Honor. Melissa's voice was faint. The judge turned back to me. Sarah, let's have lunch soon. I want to discuss the appellate brief you filed last month. The Fourth Amendment arguments were particularly innovative. After Judge Morrison returned to her table, Melissa grabbed my arm. A federal judge just said she's going to call the Senate for you. Sarah, do you understand what that means? It means she thinks I'd be a good judge. It means you're going to be a federal judge. Before you're 35. Do you have any idea how rare that is? It's not confirmed, Melissa. But it's going to happen. Everyone here knows it. Robert Whitmore told me you're one of the brightest legal minds in your generation. Eleanor Whitmore asked if you were related to me, and when I said you were my sister, she said, you must be so proud. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. And I realized I've never once been proud of you. I've only been jealous. The gala ended at midnight. I was gathering my coat when Amanda found me. Leaving so soon? It's been a long night. Sarah, I'm sorry if I put you on the spot with the introduction. Your family was treating you like you were an embarrassment and I couldn't stand it. You're not an embarrassment. You're extraordinary. Thank you for having my back. Always. He hugged me. Coffee next week? I want to hear about this Phillips case. James is fascinated. He's considering legislation based on the corruption patterns you exposed. I'd love that. As I turned to leave, Mom appeared one more time. Sarah, may I drive you home? I'd like to talk. I have my car. Please. We drove through Boston in silence for 10 minutes before she spoke. I owe you an apology. A significant one. Mom. No, let me finish. Your father and I have spent 3 years treating you like you'd made a mistake. Like you'd thrown away your potential. Tonight I watched federal judges, congressmen, philanthropists, and some of the most powerful people in Boston treat you with genuine respect. Not because of money or status, but because of your work. Because you're good at what you do. Because what you do matters. I didn't respond. Judge Morrison clerked for Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. Do you know that? She's one of the most respected appellate judges in the country. And she thinks you should be a federal judge. She's being kind. She's not kind, Sarah. I looked her up while you were talking to the Whitmores. Judge Morrison is known for being brilliant and exacting. If she says you should be a judge, she means it. We stopped at a red light. Mom's hands gripped the steering wheel. I've been so focused on traditional markers of success. Corner offices. Salaries. Partnership tracks. I didn't see what you were building. You've accomplished more by 32 than most lawyers do in entire careers. And I've been treating you like a disappointment. You have, I agreed quietly. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I appreciate that, Mom. But an apology doesn't erase 3 years of being told I'm an embarrassment. Of being excluded from family events. Of being told I threw my life away. I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. But I want to do better. I want to understand what you do. I want to be proud of you the way I should have been all along. He pulled up to my building. Before I got out, she said, Judge Morrison mentioned an appellate brief you filed. Would you be willing to explain it to me sometime? I'd like to understand your work. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow. Older. Maybe, I said. But Mom, if you're going to be part of my life, you need to accept that I chose this career because it's what I want. Not because I failed at something else. Not because I'm settling. Because prosecuting federal crimes is what I'm meant to do. I understand. Do you? Because until tonight you thought I was an embarrassment. Tomorrow when the glow of the gala wears off, will you still think I made the right choice? Or will you go back to wishing I'd taken the corporate job? She was quiet for a long moment. Tonight I watched my daughter receive a standing ovation from some of the most influential people in Boston. I watched a federal judge, the judge you clerked for, say she's going to recommend you for an appointment. I watched the congressman's wife call you her best friend and introduce you as one of the finest prosecutors in the state. And I realized I've been measuring success with the wrong ruler. That sounds nice, Mom. But words are easy. 3 years of actions say otherwise. Then let me show you through actions. Starting tomorrow. Starting now. I got out of the car emotionally exhausted. Good night, Mom. Sarah? One more thing. Melissa is devastated. Not because you outshone her, though you did, but because she realized she's never really known you. None of us have. We've been so busy judging your choices that we never asked who you actually are. No, I agreed. You didn't. Sunday morning I woke to 15 missed calls and 43 text messages. Melissa, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Dad, very proud of what you've accomplished. I should have said that years ago. Mom, coffee this week? I want to hear about your work. Really hear about it. Aunt Carol, your mother told me you're a federal prosecutor. Why didn't anyone tell me? Amanda, people are still talking about you. Robert Whitmore's foundation wants to discuss supporting federal prosecution initiatives. Call me. And one from Judge Morrison's clerk. Judge Morrison would like to schedule lunch. Please contact Chambers to arrange. I ignored most of them and went for a run along the Charles River. When I returned, Kevin had texted. Kevin, boss, you're trending on legal Twitter. Someone posted about Judge Morrison's comments last night. Hashtag federal prosecutor goals is blowing up. I groaned. The last thing I needed was social media attention. But when I checked, it wasn't what I expected. The tweets were from other prosecutors, law students, public defenders, people in the legal community celebrating public service. At Legal under he, Judge Morrison calling for Sarah Chen's appointment is huge. Chen's work on organized crime and corruption is textbook level. This is what excellent prosecution looks like. At Harvard Law 2L, just read about Sarah Chen. Federal prosecutor at 29, recommended for judgeship at 32. She's the reason I want to do public interest law. At public defender, Chen and I are on opposite sides, but I respect the hell out of her work. Fair, ethical, brilliant. She'd make an outstanding judge. My phone rang. U.S. Attorney Richard Chen. Sarah, I'm getting calls about last night. What happened? Amanda Richardson introduced me at a charity gala. It got more attention than expected. He laughed. Judge Morrison called me this morning. She's moving forward with her Senate recommendation. She said, and I quote, Sarah Chen is exactly the kind of prosecutor who should be on the bench. Smart, principled, and unafraid of hard cases. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept if the appointment comes through. We need judges like you, Sarah. People who chose this work because it matters, not because it's a stepping stone. After we hung up, I sat on my couch processing. 3 years ago, I'd walked away from prestige and money to do work I believed in. My family had called it a failure. They'd excluded me, dismissed me, treated me like an embarrassment. But I'd built something real. I'd prosecuted cases that changed lives. I'd earned the respect of judges, colleagues, and even opponents. I'd made a difference. That was what success actually looked like. On Monday, Melissa showed up at my office unannounced. The receptionist said you were in trial, she said, looking around my utilitarian government office. But your paralegal said you had 15 minutes between sessions. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. Actually apologize, not just text you. She sat down without being invited. Sarah, I've spent 3 years thinking I'd finally escaped your shadow. That I was the successful one, the one mom and dad were proud of. And then Saturday happened and I realized I've never been in your shadow. I've been living in complete ignorance of who you actually are. Melissa. No, let me finish. You prosecute organized crime. You put mobsters in prison. You've had death threats serious enough for FBI protection. I saw the security detail outside this building, Sarah. You're doing actual, dangerous, important work. And I've been calling you a failure because you don't make as much money as I wanted you to make. You were focused on different measures of success. I was focused on the wrong measures. Completely wrong. She wiped her eyes. Judge Morrison sat next to me at dinner after you left. He told me about your work. About a human trafficking case where you saved 17 women. About a corruption case that changed state policy. About how you could have stayed at Morrison and Price and made millions, but you chose to serve instead. She said that. She said you're one of the finest examples of what a law degree should be used for. And she asked me if I understood how rare it is to have a sibling who's genuinely changing the world. Melissa's voice broke. I said I didn't. Because I've been too busy being jealous to notice. I didn't know what to say. Can we start over? She asked. Can I actually get to know my sister? The real one, not the failure I invented in my head. Maybe, I said carefully. But Melissa, I'm not going to defend my career anymore. I'm not going to apologize for choosing public service. If you're going to be part of my life, you need to accept that this is what I do. I do accept it. Finally, I actually do. Over the next 3 months, things shifted slowly. Mom started asking about my cases. She couldn't know details, confidentiality rules. But she asked about the work, the challenges, what it meant to prosecute federal crimes. She attended a public lecture I gave at Harvard Law about corruption prosecution. Dad sent me an article about federal judicial appointments with a note. Proud of you. Should have said this years ago. Melissa invited me to coffee weekly. She asked about law school, about my friendship with Amanda, about the career path I'd chosen. She stopped comparing us. Judge Morrison and I had lunch monthly. She mentored me on appellate strategy, judicial temperament, the realities of life on the bench. Amanda became an even closer friend. We worked together on criminal justice reform initiatives. Her husband introduced legislation based on patterns I'd identified in corruption cases. In March, a federal judgeship opened in the District of Massachusetts. The U.S. Attorney submitted my name. Judge Morrison called the Senate Judiciary Committee. Amanda's husband, now a ranking member of the committee, supported the nomination. In June, I was confirmed as a United States District Court judge at 33 years old. The investiture ceremony was on a Tuesday morning. The courthouse was packed. My team from the U.S. Attorney's Office filled 3 rows. Colleagues, defendants I'd prosecuted fairly, public defenders I'd opposed, all came to witness. Judge Morrison administered the oath. Do you solemnly swear to administer justice without respect to persons, and do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as United States District Judge under the Constitution and laws of the United States, so help you God? I do. My family sat in the front row. Mom cried. Dad beamed. Melissa smiled through tears. After the ceremony, during the reception, Mom pulled me aside. 3 years ago, I told you that you'd thrown your life away. I remember. I was wrong. Catastrophically, painfully wrong. You didn't throw anything away. You built something extraordinary. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. Thank you, Mom. Your Honor, she corrected, smiling through tears. I have to call you that now. Amanda approached, champagne in hand. Judge Chin. Has a nice ring to it. It still feels surreal. It shouldn't. You earned this. Every single step. She raised her glass. To my best friend from Harvard Law. The one who chose the hard path, the meaningful path, and showed everyone what success actually looks like. As I looked around the courthouse, at the colleagues who'd supported me, the family who'd finally understood me, the friends who'd believed in me all along, I realized something. I hadn't needed their validation to succeed. But having it finally after 3 years of being called a failure, that felt pretty damn good.